Hey Nick, how you doing?
Hey, doing good. How you doing?
Good, good, good. Excited to have you on. Let's get right into it. Please tell us your story and let's get out of here.
Yeah, sure. I started working in e-commerce back in 2011. Started with the Adidas group. So I worked on the Reebok brand back when Adidas used to own Reebok. I was there for 7-ish years. And for part of that time, I was also on the Adidas brand working on both. Um, Always on their e-commerce team and came up through the marketing track within their e-commerce department for North America. So I began overseeing their affiliate program and then eventually their retention program, and then over the years sort of took on different responsibilities, but stayed in their e-commerce track. Um, After that, stepped away from big corporate for a while and owned my own growth agency with a couple partners. So we had smaller clients who needed help scaling, and then we had really big clients who were historically not necessarily digitally native. They were built on a wholesale model or catalog business, and they were trying to do a bit of a digital transformation and didn't have the expertise. So we would offer that. Did that for a few years, and then I went brand side again. So I worked as a head of e-commerce for Legends, an athletic apparel brand, for a few years. Recently was at PSD Underwear, and now I'm going to embark on another journey, another twist in the journey, enjoying Crocs, the footwear company, and I'll be heading up their custom footwear business. So yeah, I've been really in e-commerce for whatever that is, 14 years or something, 13 years. Rooted in marketing, but have overseen, all pieces of an e-commerce team.
Yeah, no, Nick, that's a really interesting background, and we're so excited to have you on because where I think you really lean into and tell me if this is right is really on areas of growth, right? And I think that if you look at any ecom brand, growth is at the top of their strategic kind of like priority list, right? And then also being at like one of the biggest companies, Adidas and Reebok, and then going to PSD's. It's not a small company, but it's not Reebok or Adidas, and I'm sure you rode a lot of the growth with PSD. So just maybe just your thoughts on just growth in general, and like why do some brands kind of like have it get growth more naturally, and just kind of how do you view growth just in general?
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. So the first thing I'll say is when I went from those bigger brands to then working either with smaller brands as an agency partner or at smaller brands. Um, and this is a product of experiencing both sides of the table, but also as the industry and the economics have changed, and consumer sentiment has changed. It's amazing like how important brand building is, which is typically outside of the scope of a growth marketer or like a traditional e-commerce marketer, direct response. But I remember the days when I was working at, say, Reebok, and you'd see the brand budget for the year was 20x what the e-commerce DR budget was, and we were sitting there saying, like, we can show you we spend X, we make Y, like, give us more. The brand team, maybe, because brand is hard to attribute, right? And it was like they're spending 20x what we're spending, no idea if it's working. You had all these just like, we're rooted in data, they're rooted in their gut feel, and like just those kind of conversations. And granted, I was like 23 years old, so like younger, dumber, or whatever. But I definitely think like I've seen the other side of it, where when you're small or smaller and you're chasing growth from, you're pulling all the levers in your paid channels and you're optimizing the hell out of every like KPI and metric you can in your paid side and your retention side. At some point, you just run into that ceiling where you just don't have a strong enough brand story, brand awareness, brand affinity to even be in the consideration set. And the way that caps your growth is huge. So first off, I think about growth, not just what I would control as a DR growth marketer, but what's the brand doing and how do we make sure these things are really tied together, which sounds obvious, but it's not always. And I think a lot of smaller brands or mid-sized brands have an aversion or fear of investing in brand because there is no immediate clear ROI. And so if given the choice, if you've got a fairly limited budget, I can put my dollars into this thing where I'm gonna see what the kind of input output are, or I can put it into this thing that is longer term and I don't ever really know what it kind of yields. It's easier to put it into the DR engine, but you're going to see diminishing returns before you know it. So I think that's super important. The other piece is as it relates to the kind of direct response marketing. Before you even get into what's the creative engine I'm building, are all my accounts set up and structured the right way, and like tweaking the dials. Like you've got to zoom out and really understand your unit economics, which again feels simple for some people, but for some they don't think about it. And understanding what is your break even point on an order before you spend a dime in DR marketing, and then what is your needs for profitability based on your cash flow needs. Maybe you have to be profitable on your first order with a customer. Maybe you are okay not getting that payback for 6 months. And that 6 months is 2 orders or 3 orders out of a given customer, depending on your repeat rate and your repeat time to repurchase. And so you can start to understand, like, before you get into how you acquire these customers, understand what acquiring a customer actually means for you and what the expectations and goals are for that. And then you can start to back your way into the creative you need and the channels you should use, and all that sort of stuff.
I think there's a lot of gold in these insights. It's so interesting as you're kind of explaining that. I'm thinking, you know, if you were to take an academic or a like case study kind of view and remove yourself, of course you would allocate some money to brand because you go, on paper, of course we should be growing brand. And if you were doing an academic view or like a case study or like a exercise on a brand, of course you do the same thing on like ad spend and like acquiring a customer and like your profit and that type of thing. It's funny because as soon as you don't do the academic thing and you just do it and you're actually in it and you're like, you're behind the wheel and you're running one of these things or you're doing it, it's crazy because you see people behave quite differently. It's like anything to get an order, what gets me short-term transactions today, and it kind of like throw that stuff out the window. And I don't think it's not a knock on people at all. It's just like I think it's a very different game when you're in the arena than when you're kind of theorizing it. And I think what you're saying is, hey, like you do have to do those things. Like you do have to build brand. You do have to think of these things because that's ultimately how you find sustainable long-term growth. What do you think of that? Is that a right view on that?
Yeah, and like, I mean, I get it, right? If you're, especially, let's say you're a bootstrapped business where every dollar spent is a dollar not putting food on the table or something, right? Like it could be that real. Um, yeah, hey, I can tell you to spend that dollar and I'm going to get you $2 back, or spend a dollar here and like I don't know what's going to get you back, but it's where you should put it. The decision becomes fairly like obvious. And then if you raise money, what's the horizon and what's the leeway you're given? Is it like, hey, over 2 years you need to double your business, or is it you need to double this year, you need to go like double double triple, or triple triple double double, like, or are they saying, hey, we think like this has a big opportunity, you have 5 years to double it because we want you to do it right? So like whatever those constraints are or expectations are in your business or on your personal life, if you're bootstrapped, are going to dictate often your in the moment decision making. um, and so yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And the other part is like brand building is scary and or misunderstood. Like some people think brand, like, I don't have money to run these big TV campaigns, or I can't put money towards ads that are just intended to get a video view, or whatever, right? They think these things that are like
Yeah.
expensive, or what have you. But building a brand can also be, what are your first touch points after somebody makes a purchase with you? um, how do you make them come back again through brand, not just through an offer? Sure, you can give them we got 20% off your next order, but if you have a really nicely printed insert in your box and your packaging is nice and the delivery experience was good and you had a personalized customer service outreach after the first order, those all build brand too,
Hmm.
right? Brand is like building your identity, but also your affinity. And so you don't have to necessarily spend, whatever, 9 figures, 6 figures, whatever the number might be, on a massive TV and radio campaign and blitz this region. Like you can work within a smaller area, but it's like having that lens of how do I make sure that I have the right touch points to influence to build like what I call like an emotional relationship with the customer. There's like emotional and transactional, right? And so like the transactional is very much what we do in the DR growth space, and the
Yeah.
emotional is what you do on the brand side. But there's a place where these things meet, and they also don't. Neither one has to be like crazy expensive if you are willing to maybe think a little differently about what, say, brand is.
I love that because it makes it really practical, right? And these are things like when you initially think of building brand, you go like, "Oh my god, am I going to sponsor an athlete? Am I going to run a big like Super Bowl ad?" But then when you explain it like, "Hey, it could be an insert in the packaging, or it could be the packaging itself, or it could be an outreach you do after that's a bit more personal." It's just kind of like if you're not focusing so much on the transaction, and you're just getting in front of them to kind of get them to think about you. You're doing the steps of building brand. You know, so like it sounds like through your career, you've seen the benefits of brand so that now you see, hey, like there's value in that. And I think you said one of the things you saw was that it removes the cap on growth. So like when you do invest in brand and you see brand kind of like being that tailwind for you, can you just explain that? Like what does it kind of look like in terms of
Yeah.
the results?
Yeah. I'll use like a very real example that we were just kind of walking through at PSD, my last role. So in our page, we had kind of the normal cast of channels we were using. So we were investing heavily in Meta, TikTok, Google. We had an affiliate program that was really lean because we were not focusing on deal and coupon sites. So we're just looking for like content partners. Um, and we had a great retention engine built. And then on our brand marketing side, has been built historically on doing a ton of product seeding with creators of all levels, and then doing deals with athletes and creators to kind of build brand over there. But it was just we were capping out. So with all of our paid media, we were very efficient and we were profitable on first order to a certain scale. But it was like, so let's just say I'll use fake numbers because to keep things, kind of clean
Yeah.
and not say things I shouldn't. Like, let's just say our CAC threshold was $50. We were at $30, like very profitable to a certain point. And then when we would push our spend above, it would go from 30 to 50, like very
Mm-hmm.
quickly. Like there was no in the middle. And so it was like, okay, there's something missing here where we're getting these like qualified or like at least in the consideration set people, or we're going like too far upstream. And how do we close this gap? And I felt like we just had like an awareness problem above the line and like kind of brand building, right? We needed to do something bigger. And so that's when we start considering what are alternative channels that are lower ROI within their platform and within Google or whatever your analytics tools are going to say, but they can still be a break even or slightly profitable around a break even as a standalone channel, but they have a high influence on your other channels. And so for us, what I kicked off was connected TV. I thought TV was a good next medium for us. Connected to our customers, a Gen Z customer watching everything on streaming and on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. Okay, how do we get into this world and advertise? So we had to go spend some money on a really good creative asset that would, work for those channels, and then work with a partner that was a really strong media buying partner who could be audience first. So they're looking at who our target customers are. And the reason I make that delineation is a lot of television, connected TV buying, either agencies or platforms that are self-serve, they buy with one network. So they might buy with like the Trade Desk. Um, the one that we chose works with they focus on your audience and they'll buy media anywhere as long as it's the right audience, which is a good approach. Um, and then we said, okay, let's go spend on these customers. And what we found is, our ROAS was like a 1-to-1 in platform. And so you could look at it and be like, well, in Meta, we're getting a 3-to-1. Why would we spend on connected TV? Well, we know we had the ceiling in Meta. And what we actually saw was with a Halo report, which is pulled pixel data. We don't have to get super technical, but they basically
Mm-hmm.
can measure people who do not see your connected TV ad. They just see your Meta, whatever, TikTok ads. What's their conversion rate? And if they see a TV ad and then one of those other channels, how do they convert? And we very clearly saw if they were exposed to our TV ad and then one of our other channels, the conversion rate was significantly, it was something like 8x higher. Um, so
Wow.
like, you start to see, okay, like maybe this channel in and of itself, it's TV is kind of a brand building. It's that mix of brand and DR. When you go connected TV, there's more numbers and analytics to make it feel a little more DR, but it's still the cost of more of an upper funnel and performance of an upper funnel kind of more brand awareness channel than a true like DR high return channel. But the impact is there. And so that's where I start to say like, you're hitting a cap and a ceiling. What are some other things you can do? It could be channel expansion. It could be working with new creators. It could be a whatever, but something that's going to get you, a lower return in terms of a quote unquote last click or last touch, but can impact these other channels and have a halo effect.
It's thank you for explaining it that way because I get it now. Like when you first said it, I was like, I want to learn more about that. And you said, I'm like, what does that mean? You're kind of having a bit of a cap that gets kind of removed by brand, but it makes total sense, right? Because I don't know. I think that like I'm just think like I'll give you a funny kind of example. So my wife and I have this like deck off our bedroom, and we want to have like a little fireplace there, right? And it's like a little fire table, whatever. And somebody told me about these smokeless like fire tables you can have like on a deck so it doesn't like stain the roof, whatever. And my point is this, that I'm going to look for one, okay? And if they're running meta ads or Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever, I'm going to see a few of them and I'm going to like price shop and like whatever. But if I see through to TV ad or I see like a brand that does that, it's going to change my whole perception on it because it's going to go, that's the brand. Like that's the brand for that. Right. And I think when it comes to like PSD, I think like there's a difference between seeing underwear that has like a cool like top part to it that like like really pops out versus, oh no, that's the brand for that. And if I see it as, oh, that's the brand for that, I'm obviously going to be willing to, I'll convert faster. I'll be able to, justify paying more for it. And I think that how, as a consumer, you get to the whole point of like, oh no, but that's the brand for that. It's kind of, that has to come from brand. It's not going to come from one targeted ad, right? Did my story, does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, there's validity in kind of being present in places others aren't. And, you know, you can even bridge this gap by like, I went the route of connected TV, which for some people, they don't even have the money to spend on that. Cause quick side, like I would never use one of the self-serve like connected TV type platforms because I think you're getting a lot of remnant inventory, especially if you're a small brand. If you find a solution that says like, oh, we can make CTV super cheap for you, it's probably because you're getting poor inventory. Like I just wouldn't trust it. So maybe you don't have, 20, 30, 40 plus $1,000 a month to put into this new channel, but you can change the expectations of some of your existing channels. So let's say you're advertising on YouTube and you're currently targeting a 3-to-1 ROAS, spending a little more broadly and keeping a bucket of that for upper funnel that you only expect to return at a 1-to-1, and you're going more for reach and quality reach. Like you don't want to totally just go for impressions. You want a quality impression. So what that means for every brand is different. But like my point being, you don't have to go, well, we're capping out on our existing channel, so we have to do something like massive. You can, but you can also do like a middle ground change within your existing platforms and just change the way you think about it. Change the type of creative. Don't make it as DR. Tell your brand story a little more, whatever.
It is so interesting. Like I do think the world's changed. Like I do think you can measure brand value, like in terms of helping you convert easier now because you could see, right? Like we run those TV ads, people that have show up on that Halo report, then show up on Meta, show up purchasing. We know there's like a better inelasticity with that customer. We know that they'll convert faster. So it is interesting. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it kind of firsthand. Like when you were at Reebok, you were kind of just like, it sounded like you were just kind of like just assuming brand was kind of a tailwind. But is that right? Like is it? I know it's not, brand's not the easiest thing to measure, but has it become more measurable over the years?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's, yeah, I guess you'd say it's easier. It's easier to it's easier to, the ways in which you can measure it have gotten more sophisticated for sure. Like you can see multi-touch attribution and like MMM modeling, like these things that
Yeah.
have always existed, but now because there are more competitors in the space and technology is better, it's either become cheaper or faster, easier to do. So things like post-purchase surveys, like you no longer have to go do a random focus group and do brand awareness. Like have you ever aided and unaided? You can do that stuff, but like now you can say after somebody purchases, you can do a survey that says, how did you first hear about us, and what made you purchase? What made you visit us today, and how long did it take for you to buy from your first time you saw us to now? Right, like questions like that start to just give you like a general picture of that cycle. You can do things like, if you work with the right data partners, like Halo reports, like I mentioned, you could work with an MMM type modeling, mixed media modeling tool, um, to say the more, and then it's like, hey, if we start to, as we start to invest in these new channels, how does that overall just impact our blended performance as a brand? And some of them are even predictive, so you can say, they look at your history and what you spend in your channels, and they say, hey, based on if you increase your spend in this channel, which feels like it's really upper funnel and not super profitable, we actually think it's going to do this thing to your business, which is good or bad. And they say it with a level of confidence, right? So just the tool set has expanded greatly to make things, again, like you've always been able to measure it, but now you can do it faster, more cheaply, and probably more accurately.
And which helps you iterate and that type of thing. So when you think, I mean, this is so good. So obviously, if you're a growing, ecom brand, you got to be thinking about brand, not just kind of like tomorrow's conversion numbers. And obviously, TV and there's other ways, like you said, like the packaging. You're going to Crocs though, and I know when I think of Crocs, like it's hard not to think of partnerships. Like you think of, I think their big one, the big first one was like Justin Bieber. I think that was a big one, and I think Post Malone too. But I know PSD also has some like cool NBA partnerships. So I guess my question to you is like, what do you think of partnerships as a growth channel and a brand building channel? And yeah,
Yeah, I think it can be huge. I think I don't. I think it's rare to find that one partner that changes the game for any brand. Um, you mentioned Bieber with Crocs, like however many years ago that was, and that was huge for them. I wasn't there. I don't know, but I don't know the numbers in and out, but I know it was big, right? Um, I also have seen at brands I've been at, either worked at or consulted on in the past, they put their eggs into a particular
yeah,
athlete creator and they don't see a lift and don't know why. Um, it's really hard to find the right partner that has the right audience that's going to resonate with you, who believes in the product so much that the content's going to be genuine and authentic. Like you got to check all these boxes to find
yeah,
the right partner. And even then, it just may not work. You just don't, it's hard to know why. Like it's hard to understand. And so I caution brands to away from saying like, taking a huge home run swing that's going to make or break their business on this one creator or athlete or whatever, um, because it's a high risk game. I actually think there's more to be won doing kind of like a broad, let's go for a lot of folks with economics that makes sense for our business. You'll start to see who's winning and who's losing, and if you can understand the reasons why, then maybe you move up to more expensive folks that fit into the same bucket. And I'll actually reference a quote. I've said this a few times in different conversations I've had lately, so I kind of feel like a broken record, but I don't think I've said it to you. I was chatting with the head of a brand called Gilson Snow. His name's Nick Gilson. He did a talk for my mastermind group that I run of like digital folks. And he had this whole notion. I won't give his whole backstory, but for reasons that come out of his personal life, he said, everyone is kind of conditioned to find the path that yields the highest chance of success. Like, how do we set every decision we make should be towards like, this has to have the highest rate of success, which then means you don't take as many risks
mm,
because risks could lead to failure. And so the way he flips this on his head is he says, our goal should be to reduce the cost of failure to the point where failure is okay and in fact encouraged, so that we can get through all the losses really quickly and find the winners more quickly. And just as long as we have the infrastructure to like double down once we find those winners, right? So in this, to apply, that's what we're talking about here, rather than saying we've got to find the one perfect creator, athlete, musician, whatever, who's going to cost us six figures and like it's high risk, but we think it's going to work. No, I would say, how do you create deals that are going to, even if they don't work, they're low risk for you, right? So they're highly based on performance. Can you hold no inventory when you work with these folks and do it as a pre-sale? Like, what are the ways you can reduce the cost and the risk, and then work with 100 of them? And you only need, if they don't hit, there's very little lost other than your time. And the ones that do, just make sure you can capitalize on it. And then again, try to identify the patterns and the reasons as to why they work. So you can then start to double down. And then maybe you are willing to take a bigger swing on someone that's, a little more expensive or demands a little more because you've sort of, they have the same DNA as the other winners.
I love talking to people like you, Nick. I mean, so many times I think, oh, something happens by chance or something happens just because, right? And then you talk to someone like you who like has experienced growth at many brands, and then you're like, what effectively you're saying is like, you got to be strategic, you got to be thoughtful, you got to be tactful, and like you can't just kind of like fly by the seat of your pants on this stuff. Like there is a like a method behind this stuff, and you really have to think through it. And I love that because I think it does give people a playbook, right? I mean, like what you're saying to me, before I really thought about it, it seems obvious after. I guess a better way of saying it is it seems obvious after you say it that this is exactly how you should do it, right? I mean, taking a huge bet on one thing that may or may not work, even though if you think it's going to work, it could put you in a really compromised position. Whereas if you do kind of be more thoughtful about it and kind of build more of a system for it, you're not optimizing for the one individual chance, but you're optimizing for your overall chance of success, right? Which I really really like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like it makes sense. And so you would think like, I'm just thinking like there's TV ads, there's partnerships, which obviously like Crocs is a great example of that. I think PSD as well. Well, what else would fall into that bucket? I'm just trying to like think through additional ways because that brands like emerging e-com brands can think about growth in those buckets.
Yeah, I think there can be an event strategy. Again, events can get really
Yeah.
expensive really quickly, but if you're thinking, hey, we're going to go hyper local, in our state or in our, whatever, our county, whatever that might be, a couple of states that neighbor, and we're going to have a strategy that is, we're not going to spend more than X dollars on a given event. And what is the goal? Again, like, can you sell at these events? Are you the kind of product that people will actually buy at an event, or is the kind of thing where you're trying to just get awareness so they buy after the fact, right? Like, give you an example. If you're selling a T-shirt at an event, you can probably sell it fairly easily, like depending on the type of event, right? If they sell concert T-shirts
Yeah.
by the hundreds, right? But if you were trying to sell a piece of furniture, like very rare people are going to be able to transport that from the event out, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a broad spectrum in there, but like make sure your product can actually work at an event, or if not, um, what do you want the goal to be? Very similar. Think about like cold plunges. A lot of these companies that sell saunas and cold plunges go to major fitness events. Like, I don't know how many people are buying a plunge at an event. If they are, they're likely just getting it shipped to their house, right? They're not like, not loading it up in the truck. But even that, it's a multi-thousand-dollar purchase. It's not an impulse buy.
Yeah.
So is their goal really, okay, then what's the action you want to have happen at that event? We want them to get in the thing so they experience it. And that's most important. And then we want to get their email, right? So we can follow up with them. Okay, then like make sure you have a couple of cold plunges there. Make sure you partner with an apparel brand to give bathing suits or shorts or replacement pair of shorts. So like, what are all the things you can do to, like, if somebody walks up to this thing, they have an awesome experience where they can touch, feel, taste, whatever the senses are for your product, experience it, have a positive brand connection, and then you make sure you have the things in place to follow up with them, their email, their SMS, whatever it might be, right? So I think that's a thing you can do. It is more labor intensive. It's hours sitting at events to go hand to hand combat, I call it, right?
Yeah.
But maybe that is still more effective for a given brand than running a 6-figure TV campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes me think that I think of each brand that I interact with as like it's with its own. They all have their own identity, right? And what makes me excited about every brand that I purchase is different from one to the other, right? Like I may pick this brand because it's got like it pops a lot and it speaks to me in a different way than like another brand does. It seems like if you're looking for a recipe for growth, your recipe that's going to work is going to be unique to you, right? I mean, like I think probably a mistake people make is they probably go, oh well, I know another brand that did this much percentage in Facebook ads, did this much here, so I'll do the same thing. And you kind of, it feels like you kind of have to just like look inwards and say what's going to be the right mix for me and what's authentic to my brand, and what's going to like carry that over time. Is that a fair kind of way to think of it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, like there's definitely enough brands are having wins on things like Meta, like you should be there. I don't think you need to completely throw that out and say like it might not be for us because like we're different. Like, there's certain platforms and certain tactics that are tried and true enough that that they can work for you. The strategy of how they work for you might be different. Again, right? Like, how much are you willing to pay for an order through that platform? Are those, maybe you find the customers that come through Meta, actually they're not all that valuable over time. They're a one and done set of purchasers, and that's what's different for you. But the platform still matters, can still be impactful. So for sure, I think like there's a baseline of things that everyone should do. You should have your automations from a retention perspective dialed in, like what that means for you if you're a furniture seller versus a apparel seller. Very different. Like if you sell a t-shirt, you probably get them to come back and buy another t-shirt in the first 30 or 45 days. If you're selling them, $5,000 piece of furniture, like they're probably not buying another one next week, right? So like again, the tactics are different, but the strategies in terms of the channel mix are the same. Like have your email automations dialed in, have your SMS channel dialed in. Yes, you should likely be running paid ads on Meta and or TikTok or both, as long as you have the content to support those channels. You should probably be running something on Google, whatever that means for you and your brand. But then beyond that, yeah, it's very much like maybe events is good for you. Maybe TV is good for you. Maybe direct mail and catalogs are good for you. Maybe you need to go really hard with creators and influencers. Like that part of it's going to be different for every brand.
I think it's the speaker you referenced mentioned, right? It's like set yourself up so you can try these things, and if they fail, you can move on to another thing, and you'll find what's working, right?
100%. Yeah. And failure one time doesn't mean failure forever, right? So it's like iterating as well. So like it's not hey, we tested with 10 creators and we don't think it worked. Like that's not for us. It might just mean you need different creators, or you need different incentives for them, or you need different program guidelines, or you need to put money behind their content to actually get like whatever, right?
It's so interesting. I mean, the world's obviously it's competitive, and I think that the brands that are doing well and winning, a lot of them are. It's not coming to them for free. Right? I think they're being thoughtful. They're working through these things, and they're getting to the right mix for them. And it's becoming. It sounds a bit cheesy, but I think it's becoming a bit more of an art form in terms of like how you set up a brand to kind of grow. Hey, just a question, because you mentioned this a couple times. What about like you mentioned retention? So when you kind of roll your sleeves up and say, okay, I'm at this brand now, I want it to grow. What kind of like it's going to be different for every brand, right? But what could you say in terms of the effort going into net new versus like, hey, you have existing customers here, we should be getting them to come back more frequently?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's important to understand, try to find some industry benchmarks on what a good repeat purchase rate is for your particular category, right? Should your customers have a 15-day repurchase cycle? Like if it's a consumable product, maybe that's how often they burn through it. Or is it a 1 year cycle, or is it a 30-day cycle? Like understand what that means for your brand. And then that sets your goal on, okay, we want to have X percentage of our customers hitting that window. And there are lots of great tools out there that can help you understand customer analytics. I don't know if I should talk about the ones I use, because I don't know.
I mean, feel free to mention, I
Okay.
mean, if you want
So
to,
for
or
example,
even generally, yeah.
yeah. Like there's a company that I've worked with in the past called Tydo, Tydo, and they do a great job of helping you understand customer analytics. And again, things like average time to repurchase and lifetime value over 30 days, 90 days, 365 days. And so getting a grasp on your benchmarks on those things, and then what is maybe average for your industry, then just sets the course on like, okay, we know where we're at today. We know where we want to be. We're over or above industry. Cool. I do think for most brands, there's like a core set of automations that apply for everyone, but how you put them into practice is different, right? So it's and this applies for email and SMS or both, whatever you're using. It's a welcome flow. It's an abandonment flow or multiple flows, like checkout abandon versus browse abandon. Some work for different products, some work for others. It's your post-purchase follow-up, and then it's some kind of like re-engagement, replenishment, win back. So after a purchase, and then if they have disengaged with you for a while, like how do you activate these people, these customers? And very different for different product categories. So that's like the first thing is I'd say, okay, where are we today on our benchmarks? Do we have these baseline automations in place, and how can we improve them, and like really put that customer lens on, does this make sense in our journey? I think it's really important to make sure all of your touch points add value. So oftentimes you'll see brands like, an abandoned cart email, right? Very common. Everybody knows what they are. And you get this and it says like, hey, we saw you looking at us, or like, hey, you forgot something in your cart. I can tell you fairly confidently, like 90% of people who left something in their cart didn't forget it. They walked away for a reason, right? They didn't just like forget it was there. They either were unsure of the product, they didn't have the money, they thought the pricing was too high, or they'd never experienced the product before and don't have confidence in it, Um, the shipping time was really long, and so they decided to maybe go look and see if it's available on Amazon. Like there's some reason, there's some friction that stopped them from buying it. Now maybe they were at their kids' soccer practice and just
Yeah.
browsing on their phone, and they actually walked away, and you reminding them is going to get them to come back and buy. But I find that to be a fairly small percentage of folks, and so don't just go through the motions. If you're going to set up in a checkout abandonment or cart abandonment email, like don't take the out of the box, the dummy email that like your ESP just like puts in there for you that says like you left this here and shows the product. Think about what the friction points might be. If you're a high price point product, you need to do more selling, or you need to add in some customer social proof, some reviews. You need to say, our CX team is here for you. Talk to an actual agent and we'll help you find the right fit for you. If you're a highly customizable product, maybe people aren't sure that the thing that they just customized actually is cool. They think it might be cool, but they don't want to wear it if it thinks it's actually kind of dorky. So maybe you need to give them some design tools and tips. Like you got to figure out the reasons why people might not be buying your product and use these standard quote unquote automations and like really apply them to your customer journey and experience.
I love that. It feels like it follows the same similar theme you've kind of given us through all this, which is like you got to dig deeper and be a bit more thoughtful. And it's not just like there's no kind of like silver bullet here, but there are kind of like a lot of lead ones you can use, right? So
Yeah.
I like that because the easy thing to do is like, hey, I'm going to set up a card abandonment email, but the thing is like, okay, well, do that, but then also like find out what the root kind of thing is, right? And if you can get it at the root, you're going to have higher conversions and ultimately grow, right? I
Yeah,
think
and
that,
you can do
yeah,
that
go ahead.
a bunch of ways. Like you can use your gut and understand, like we have a high price point. That's probably a point of friction. How do we break that down? Customer reviews, right? Like you can go through that exercise. I think it's super valuable, and that's a great starting point. You can also do your post purchase surveys. Like, hey, you finally purchased from us. Like, how long did it take for you to purchase? And if they say
Yeah.
3 months, you think that's a long time, ask them why, or ask them the most important factors that went into their decision. Or after somebody buys, like have your customer service person, or if you're the founder, whatever, literally email them and ask for a phone conversation and say, and just ask, hey, what went into your decision to buy us and why maybe didn't you buy us sooner and why did you buy us now, and use that real data. A sample size of 5 or 10 can actually be representative of much wider. You don't need to do a 300 person case study on why people are or not buying your product. So I definitely use that data, and I think the same thing applies, like not to get totally like plugging what you do, but I think loyalty is another big component there where it's very easy to turn on a loyalty program that gives people points in exchange for purchases. And that has a home. But I think going back to a point I made earlier, there's emotional connections and transactional, right? If you're giving people points that they can come back and use as a discount later, that's a very transactional relationship. There's still value there. It probably still gets people to come back and buy, especially if you communicate it to them the right way and remind them they've got points and they've got discounts available. Um, but you could probably be better than that as well and think, what do my customers want? Like, what's the mind state of my customer? I sell a fitness product. Okay, they're trying to change up their workout routine, or they're trying to get their body back, or they're postpartum and they feel like they now have a chance. They need to try to win their body back. That pregnancy had a lot of changes on their body. They want to change it. Okay, what else can we offer them? We can offer them some content from third party providers. We can offer them some classes, free credits to do this online coaching with a third party. Like you don't have to just serve your product, sell your products, give them experiences that are tangential to your products that add value to their life. And I guarantee you that that's not going to have a next day ROI, but that's going to have that longer term brand building. And so getting people like into the fold and rewarding people who raise their hand and say they want to be a part of your brand is how I think about loyalty.
Yeah, yeah. No, thanks for taking the conversation there too. I mean, I think that like I think brands do, especially the ones that are doing well. I think they do such a good job of giving you reasons to purchase, and the reasons to purchase may be the founder story, it may be the unique ingredients, the unique product materials, or like even just like the philanthropic approach they're taking to the product or anything like that. I think they do a great job of getting the customer in the right way with the right messaging, and so many brands kind of forget that when they think about a loyalty program or a kind of a retention thing, it's kind of like they throw all that good stuff out and they go, "We're going to give you a discount to come back." It's like, I didn't come here initially. I didn't find you. I didn't fall in love with you as a brand because of a discount. Yet your plan to get me to come back is going to be monetary and a discount. I think that what they should be doing, and this is why we're so kind of passionate about what we're doing, is like, you know, discounts and points, those are great and they serve a purpose for sure, right? And I think if it's my birthday and you want to give me a gift card, I love that, right? But if you want me to think about you again, I wouldn't lean so heavily on the discount stuff. I think there's a lot of other things that you can use, right? And I think
Yeah.
what I've really enjoyed about talking to you too, Nick, is that I think there's an element of brand building there, right? I think that if you can bring your customers back, not just vis-a-vis through points and discounts, you're not only just getting them to come back and think of you, you're at the same time building your brand. And that's going to ultimately drive other kind of levers for you, which is kind of a little bit of an epiphany, which is really exciting for us to think about here. What would you say? I mean, would you agree with some of that?
Yeah, 1,000%. Like I actually go all the way back to shoot. This was probably in like 2015 or 16 when I was at Reebok still, and they were, the team was like, "How can we do something different for holiday this year?" Right? Like, yeah, we're gonna run our Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals, and whatever, but like, how can we do something bigger? And I was heading up retention, and I said, like, why don't we do there's very common to do like a 12 days of deals kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was like, what if we make those 12 days different? So what we went to is we said, okay, over the course of these 12 days, we'll have, I think we had like 3 discount offers on 3 different days were discount focused. But like 2 or 3 of those days were we're going to drop a new product, like a hype product from our classics division or whatever, and we're going to in limited quantities, 500 or less, 1,000 or less, right? And obviously, we had them kind of teed up in the calendar already, so we could just shift them. If you're
Yeah.
going to plan for this, you need to do it on a longer like planning cycle. So we had a couple days were exclusive products or limited products, a couple days were deals, and the others were actually deals or giveaways from third parties. And
Sweet.
so we had I don't remember what they were, but for an example, it could have been we were a fitness forward, Reebok was an athletic brand, so we could say, hey, this day we partnered with some healthy meal company and we're going to give away 1,000 1 week of meals free through this third party, right? The next day it was like, hey, for the women who are like in our, like, we're going to give you some cruelty free makeup brand that's like a cool trendy brand, and they're going to give away 500 starter kits or something, right? Like things that you wouldn't necessarily think of. Reebok isn't selling makeup or whatever, but like, you know what, we have women who buy from us who care about the way that they look and they are looking for cool new brands, and this is what we did, right? And like those pieces, like we didn't get anything back from those third party brands. Like there was no commission that they're giving back to us, but it gave us a chance to add something new to our customers, which was introducing them to other brands, adding value to their lifestyle without selling a product that, again, like I actually left like the following, like a few months after this all, but like I would bet my money, dollars to donuts that drove a lot of brand sentiment, that drove repeat purchases later, because we found ways to add value to these folks. And we didn't do it through a loyalty program. We did it every day. We would reveal the day's thing at like 10 a.m. and it was kind of first come, first serve. But if you could package that into a loyalty experience, or at the very least use it to capture their email or SMS as a way to unlock it, that's where you start to get some traction.
Yeah, love that. I mean, we do that, right? I mean, we have brands we run their loyalty program for where they offer affiliated and like benefits that tie to other brands. And it's such a great way for the brand to kind of speak to you and say, hey, this isn't even from us, but we think you would enjoy this. We're going to give this to you, right? And by the way, one of the reasons we do that is because, we have this view of like, every brand should have an awesome loyalty program, and a really awesome loyalty program is the Sephora program. But you may not have the resources Sephora has, so let us kind of help you have the Sephora loyalty program. And Sephora does this really like in a really smart way, actually. So Sephora gives out samples for products as a point redemption method. And by the way, they also get paid by those suppliers to give out those samples. So I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but I mean, obviously it's economically friendly for them. But
Yeah.
the whole idea of saying, hey, this isn't from us, like this is not one of our products, but we think you'd really benefit from it or enjoy it. We've incorporated that into the loyalty programs we run, and we're seeing similar benefits, similar kind of outcomes, because I think it's authentic. I think it's a brand speaking speaking to you and saying, hey, I'm not just trying to sell you, Nick. Like, I'm not just trying to, you already purchased from us. Here's what we think is next, which would be great for you next in your journey here. Yeah, love it. I mean, yeah, I'm sure you have stuff like that planned for Crocs and that type of stuff. But yeah, hey, just any, I know we're kind of running a little bit late on time here, but any other kind of like fun growth ideas that kind of fall into the same kind of similar categories?
I mean, other things that we had been testing, or I had been testing at PSD, that was working was direct mail. You know, it's back.
Oh
It
yeah,
works. We were using Postpilot. There's other partners out there. I think, just make sure you can test it. So I think when you test anything new, make sure you can actually measure it against a holdout group, ideally. And like Postpilot allowed you to do that. So I thought that was really great. So yeah, we were testing Postpilot and seeing success there. I was working with a company called Winback Pro, who helps you re-engage your lost customers via email and SMS, and they have all sorts of ways to protect deliverability and to make sure you're not falling into traps. And I think that was a really great thing for us. They were driving 6 figures of revenue per month of incremental revenue tested against a holdout
oh,
group. So like that's something I think is really strong. We were getting into connected TV for the last few months I was there, and that was proving to be, especially when you looked at a Halo report, it was looking to be positive. Um, yeah, I think those are the things I was testing. But I think there's lots of other opportunities, and some of it's even just technology that helps you improve your existing programs. Like if you have an affiliate program, Social Snowball is like a kind of a hot tool right now that can help you empower your audience to be sellers for you. That I think is really cool. So I think it's like, be open to technology conversations and maybe listen to those sales guys that reach out to you on LinkedIn that you think are really annoying, but maybe they have a really cool product and offering. Yeah, just be willing to test things. And again, like reduce the cost of failure so you can test more and learn more. And don't forget about brand.
I love it, man. I think that, if I'm just kind of like summarizing some of the things even just I've learned, it's like from chatting with you. I mean, one, I think you want to be thoughtful and kind of have a steady, like you want to have a steady hand through this because there are things you can do that will drive growth, right? I mean, so that's exciting to know. And it's not just like people, it's not necessarily people getting lucky. It's people actually doing the work and being thoughtful about this. And then the thing I really like is, it's around building that system, right? Where it's like build a system where you can fail because you're not everything you do is going to work, and there's things that are going to work, things that aren't going to work, and your job is to kind of just figure out the things that aren't going to work quickly and lean into things that are working. And I mean, I think that works for so many things in life. I don't know why. I mean, life would be easy if you just could connect these things without having someone like you kind of explain them. But yeah, no, I love it. And maybe just one last question, and we can leave it there. What's your kind of like? What's your view on the whole e-com kind of world going forward? And if you were betting on kind of one big growth channel that maybe people aren't thinking about today, what would that be?
Um, I think the thing I'm thinking about right now, I might answer this a little differently than what
Yeah,
you asked. But like what I'm thinking about right now, and I'm not sure where I fall on it, is I've heard more and more people of late say the future of the future of online selling for brands is actually off platform. It's marketplaces, it's selling through influencer channels, whether it's TikTok shops, Meta shop, it's selling your product on places that are not your .com. Um, and I don't know if I believe that. I believe that those channels are going to continue to grow for sure, but I don't know if I think that that's going to be 50% of your sales. I don't know if you want it to be 50% of your sales. Maybe 50% of your acquisition, your first time buyers. But I would always be thinking, how do you get them to come back to you directly where you can own that relationship? Um, these marketplaces, for example, make it difficult, right? Like Amazon doesn't give you the transaction
yeah.
data or the mailing address necessarily unless you're fulfilling it yourself. Um, but how can you find ways to get those people to come back to you? Sometimes it's not even a question of because sometimes the margins are better selling direct on your site. Sometimes they're not, but it's more because, again, if you're thinking about, we want to add value to this person's daily life or their journey in as many ways as we can. If that's your view on building a brand, which for me it is, the only way you can do that is if you can communicate with them in as many means as possible and learn as much as you can about them, which is really difficult to do through third party selling. So that's just something I've been thinking about a lot. I don't know if I have a like what I just shared with you is my like initial hunch, but I could be proven super wrong. I don't know. But that's just like I think like the hot new thing I'm thinking about is where's this like future of commerce?
Yeah, no, and I would agree with you. I mean, I think that at the essence, like what is happening? There's a customer buying a product from a brand. And I think that there's things in between, like Amazon can be in between, a retailer can be in between, and they all can serve their purpose. But that those are the means to the end, right? Like the whole point of it is the customer wants the product from the brand. And I think that, you got to think that the world will get more efficient and more optimized where there's going to be less distance between the brand and the customer, not more, right?
You'd
I'm
hope.
with you.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be true, but you hope. I think it's like I would just always try to find a way. The customer data is like what everyone's actually after. Like so, I would just try to find a way to, as you continue to expand into again third party marketplaces or off channel selling, like off your .com. What are the ways you can delight the customer so much that they want to come back and check out at a minimum, check out the rest of your assortment, right? So
Yeah.
there's segmentation strategy. Don't put all your products in every other channel. So they have to come back to you to find the other stuff, or box inserts, again, like packaging insert. Like what are the things you can do that make them want to come back and either check you out on your site or follow you on social or whatever, some way to get them into your world versus the third extension world.
Love it. Nick, thank you so much. You're a wealth of knowledge, and it's been such a joy chatting with you. Thanks so much, man. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Appreciate the time.